Hello guys again. We will start just in a minute, and today we have a roundtable dedicated to career path of young scientists and uh, which skills do the young scientists have to be successful in the lab. So we have experts from several laboratories across Europe and Russia, and they will share their opinion. Okay, sorry for a little delay. So as usual on big conferences, our schedule just shifted a little, but we will start just in a few minutes. Hello, Head. Not exactly, because today we have a team of experts, and many of them are native speakers, so if you want me to say that. And you will have an opportunity to listen to very good English, not like mine. Okay, it seems we have all the experts in place. Okay, I enable mics, including the mics in the room, and I think that we will.
Okay, dear participants, we're starting our evening event, which is called Round Table, but as usual, it is not round, but a long table. I think this is not a problem, and it is devoted to the career of the young scientist. It's his key competences and important features. I think you should know most of experts that you see in front of you, because they were speakers of this day and yesterday, except one guy whose name is Alexei Zeifman. He will be speakers of tomorrow, and but nevertheless, I think it will be interesting first to give opportunity to all of our experts to introduce themselves and to put emphasis just on their career, how they started, what they achieved, to what country moved, if they switched their field of research or action, and so on. And please be short, in maximum 3 minutes, I think. And name yourself also first. You can take 3 mics. Let's start with Tim, for example.
Okay, so briefly, so the first topic in MT I thought was that I was chemistry, and then I started studying biochemistry. While studying biochemistry, basically every 1 year, nearly everybody in our course a complete biochemistry crisis, because we were looking for all different types of techniques to review that. It was fun to study, but it was unimaginable for me that I just stick to that for the rest of my life. It only became apparent very recently that I used to studying to aesthetically study the work. This class, I think, are not so advanced. Basically, only last week. Pretty open, it's very easy to do abstract. Different labs, so I was in New York, and Italy, and Israel, and back in New York, and with my PhD in Munich, where I had a near scientific near-death experience. It went horribly wrong, I would say. So then I did my postdoc in San Francisco, had some fortune to become a group leader in Berlin, and now since 6 years I'm in the role of book professor, again in the medical department, something. It's exactly why I was not very good application for long. At some point you just go with it, and I would never imagine actually accepted that. But it's a perfect environment in the end, and now being technically 1 year, actually I was on 10 years, so I really like long in position. So basically since 1 year I know that I was paying
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Well, I graduated from Moscow State, Moscow State University, and then I worked with the 90s. Okay, so I moved to the United States to studies there at the University of Southern California, but geology and very young. And then of course I started working on some things related to tracking the visual images of the camera and finding the moving objects, and now that we have these cameras that track objects, the happiness is 200 to 500 points for students with a regular pay. Well, I didn't know about that, but then when I met a professor who was actually an electrical engineer, but was really easy to read against the group, and from that moment I started working on energy. Data analysis and also site projects for the human protection. I definitely need for how years of the first one is going to do this. Then I started working for a small company, so the imaging was developing the software for analysis of PV and energy data. And just before getting the PV, I got married, and that defined the fact that 2 years after graduating, I came back to Russia because my wife said that I had to be in St. Petersburg. I said, no, some years is good enough. So I go back to St. Petersburg. And there I am. So I've been working in St. Petersburg remotely with that company for 10 years. Until I was invited to be the senior research scientist at the High School of Economics, so we set up the Center for Commission and Decision Making. And I've been there for like 4 years, and now we want to be underground and working at my own lab on biological interfaces. And I can tell you that HFC now actually is huge on Russian places. I mean, I think I think that one that I know HFC and maybe probably but so spread over years, so maybe things. But HFC is a great place to work at and to students to study. My name is Alexandr Panчин, and I'm actually a principal at RB. Second stage in 7 or 8, and then I success in different data, and I think that that's very much concentration material. But then I moved to also technology to study chemistry and joined the lab of competencies. So I believe that it's very good thing to do after again chemistry, very important one.
So while studying at this lab and working with PhD supervisor, I've been in parallel co-founding a startup company named Fusion Pharma. So I've been doing my PhD in Russia and in parallel trying to create a new drug with this company. Afterwards, I think after finishing my PhD in Russia, I decided to move back to field scientific area, and I did my postdoctoral studies in Southern Europe, in Sweden. Then I returned back and I decided that it's more exciting and more appealing to me to do some kind of rather startup activities, but I decided to join a venture capital at this time. And so actually since 2015 I've been with Artery Capital, capital fund in Russia, and actually I'll tell a bit more about the fund tomorrow in my lecture, but currently I'm with the fund and I am mostly responsible for sourcing the development of startup projects coming out from Russian universities and
Okay, dear young colleagues, it's quite unusual format for me. It's the first time in my life I try to explain my biography details. And I'm afraid that my story probably is not very exciting and interesting, but anyhow, I graduated from the Moscow Engineering Physics Institute, experimental and theoretical physics department, and already being a student, a third-year student in 81, last century, so I began to work at the Shemyakin and Ovchinnikov Institute of Bioorganic Chemistry, preparing my first research work, and then master diploma. At that time we had no master diploma, just a diploma. And after I prepared my PhD thesis, still at the Shemyakin Ovchinnikov Institute Bioorganic Chemistry, and got my PhD in biophysics at the Lomonosov Moscow State University. And then I continued to work at IBCH, Shemyakin Institute, making mainly experimental work, spectroscopy of proteins and especially membrane proteins. But already at that time I understood that for me personally it's not sufficient enough just to record a good spectra, but also to understand what does it mean and to interpret spectra. So I moved more and more into the modeling and computational area, and I'm still working, you know, at the Shemyakin Institute. It's more already than 37 years. But there were some fluctuations. So in early 90s, it was a very difficult time, as you probably learned from the books or from your parents. And I received an invitation from University of Reims, Champagne. And I spent first half a year there. And then my family came and we moved to Lille. I received invitation to be a professor, visiting professor in Lille. So we in total lived some 5 years there, and I was working on my subjects. It's not very usual because I could continue my research already in computational biophysics, studying proteins and membranes. Then I tried to get a position in France, but without success. And I'm happy now that it was like that. So I returned back, and finally I established my first molecular modeling group at the Shemyakin Institute. And in 2010, it was transformed into the laboratory of biomolecular modeling. It is still there, and I don't know what to add. If you need some more focused advices, I just can say probably two. two examples. First, for people working in computational area, just it is very advisable to know how experiment works and to know experimental work at least in some details, because only computing, in my feeling, is not completely enough. We should understand all the difficulties which can arrive from the experimental partners. Yeah, and probably that's all. So thank you for your attention.
Roman Gerbertovich is a little bit modest. I will add that he is a scientific deputy director of our institute. No?
Yeah, so hi, I will make it short. Initially, I'm a computational chemist, a quantum chemist actually. So I graduated in France in computational chemistry, and then I moved as a postdoc in France because I've been offered a postdoc in France. So I had a postdoc in the University of Nice, and immediately after this postdoc, they offered me a tenure track. So I accepted it. So the story is very short. So yeah, I finished to build my group in the University of Nice, as you probably heard from my talk yesterday. Now we're working in molecular modeling and also psychophysiology to find some relationship between the neuron point of view and the emotional point of view. And what is probably of interest for you is that now I'm part of the national CNRS recruiting committee, so I'm recruiting young people for the CNRS. I'm part of the United States of America NSF computational chemistry experts. And I'm also an expert for the European community for the research project. And so with all this expertise, I'm not an expert in recruiting young people, but I see a lot of CVs and projects coming on from different areas.
So a little bit different with me. My life is very complicated. Nothing really worked out. Every decision which was made came out something very bad. And it started 97 when I got my PhD in Germany. There were no jobs, so I had to leave the country. And I didn't want to go to the US. I didn't even want to go to the US for visiting, for vacation. But it was the only option what I had. So then I got a postdoc position in North Carolina at one of the NIH institutes. It was good. And then finally, proteomics came up. There were jobs there. And I got a job offer like in the Netherlands, but also the institute wanted to keep me. I wanted to go to the Netherlands, but something bad happened again. I don't want to go into it. And I stayed over there at NIH. And shortly after this, there was one employee made my life really miserable because I wanted to have my job. And then I got recruited by, again, I moved, I got recruited by UNC. University of North Carolina in the medical department, the faculty, and in the biochemistry department. But I'm a chemist. I've never heard one lecture on biochemistry, so don't tell anyone. Then I was there, and then something bad happened again in 2006. UNC mishandled a grant, and I had to pay back $50,000 for my own salary. I was like, fuck it. And I'm out of here. And then I got, in the same moment, I got an email from Victoria. We're looking for someone like you. And then I went to Victoria first, but I didn't accept the offer. UNC came back with a counter offer, back and forth. I accepted the counter offer, and something bad happened again. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm going to Victoria. And since 2006, I'm in Victoria. And then also, like, I had problems with the administration, and then I was at McGill, and then I talked to someone and said, like, oh, I really would like to have you over here. And I said, yeah, great, but how much does it cost? And I said, about $10 million. That's just like what I have acquired over the years at Victoria. There's a lot of very fancy machines. I said, well, it doesn't work out, like 10 minutes to watch. And so we came up with a 50-50 split, 50% at McGill and 50% Victoria. And so far, everything is fine. Now I'm waiting for something bad happening again, then I move somewhere. In the meantime, I founded 2 companies. One is called Creative Molecules. It's a small company. They're doing cross-linking reagents with my actually Russian friend. And we're using all the money for parties. As you know, like you cannot put alcohol on the grants. So when we're going out with the students to the big conferences, we pay for everything. And the other company, it's called MM Proteomics. It's a very serious company. We just moved to Montreal. And we might moving to Skoltech. So we are in discussion, might be going to Russia. That's pretty much my life.
So my story is not half as exciting as any of those. So I qualified as a doctor from Oxford University around 20 years ago now, and since then I've tried to do research and clinical work throughout simultaneously, and probably did both quite badly. I started off doing a PhD at University College London in neuropsychology and cognitive neuroscience, looking at patients who'd had strokes. And as I've progressed, I've got more and more interested in dementia, and mainly because of the patients I see and the problems I see. And now I'm still trying to do both quite badly.
Okay, thank you all. Next, I will invite everyone in this auditorium not only listen but also speak. If you want to say something or ask anything from our experts, please shout to Maria, and she will give her a mic, and also Alexander. And I will just throw several questions that we will discuss, and not only experts but all participants can add something to this discussion. There will be around 3 or 4 questions, because we do not have too much time. We have to finish by 6 o'clock, and the first subject will be about postgraduate studies. Do you have to make your work in your own country or move to another, and which one to choose? And we do not have to speak every one of you, just who wants to start? Okay, Jerome.
I can start because I didn't make any postdoc abroad, so my story was a little bit clear. Anyway, if you look at the rules we apply for the French CNRS, which is the National Research Community in France, we do not recruit young people if they do not have made a postdoc in a foreign country. So it is not a written rule, but it is systematically applied.
Everyone knows it.
Everybody knows it. So all the PhD students, they know they have to go into a different country, and they have, and we ask them to publish at least 1 or 2 first author papers in a different lab in another country to be recruited by CNRS. Of course, you must have published in very high impact journal and so on and so forth. We'll probably discuss about that later on. But the idea is that you should visit another country.
Yes, I think it is a little bit different than in Russia.
Yeah, I might want to add. So what is really important is like not that you pick like the most important or most prestige universities. It doesn't need to be MIT, it doesn't need to be Stanford, Harvard, when you do your postdoc. What is important is that you have a very good environment, that everything is there, that instruments are there, that the PI has enough money, good connection, and so on. And I see it a lot, like a lot of people that are planning in your age, are planning their career. I need to go here and here and here. And they did this, and they're ending up like in a great lab, with a Nobel Prize winner. And then after that, they get a faculty position, and you won't hear from them anymore. All of a sudden, like there's no science, no nature anymore coming out. Because it's mainly pushed by their PI. It's better if you do this from the beginning when you are a postdoc, and postdoc time is actually the best time. It's only a project, and it's only you. And if you have all the possibilities and opportunities to really progress your project, that is more important than that you have a good smell. Like that means like the lab has a good smell. That is the most important thing. Like it's more important if you're getting a really good paper out with a PI who is maybe not that famous. Compare like to you have like your another science paper from this person who has this only published in Nature and Science and so on. So this is what I never planned my career, and I've seen like many people who planned this, they all failed. Really, like most of them that really failed. So do not go for a big name. Do really go for the environment and really have an idea what you want to do. That's my advice.
In my opinion, it is very individual, and there are so many factors that can affect. But in general, I agree with both colleagues who already spoke. Mobility is obligatory, and it is probably not necessary to move before making PhD, because before termination of your PhD thesis. And also, if you are interested in some scientific project already after graduation, the institute already being the student, and I think if you have financial possibility or your family has such a possibility, try to continue and to go as far as you can in your career to be at least PhD, and then at least you can preserve in general or in some parts your research topic, which is really interesting for you. Okay, because if you are very young, just graduating, and you don't know exactly what to do, so in this case, yeah, good lab with good publications and big chief, it's okay. So you will get some publications, top rank probably, but it will be not already your own choice. Okay, you probably I'm not very clear in explanation, but it depends on your individuality. If you would like to go straight forward your research topic, so just it takes much more efforts, yes. But if you are not really determined, so in this case you can do such planning of career, estimation, different chances. This lab is better as trampoline to jump, and so on. So in my opinion, it's really individual question, and I always advise my PhD students, if they would like to stop and because of some difficulties, no ideas, no time, no money, and so forth, so on, I just say, if you really can survive till your PhD thesis defense, just try to do this, and after you can leave and go away and try to find some more interesting place. But if your topic is not really sufficient to you, and you can easily change to other area, so it's better to leave right now and to stop. It's just my understanding. Thank you.
Maybe I can talk a few words from my personal experience. So for me, it was quite a difficult decision a few years ago, either to continue to stay with my own lab or startup, whatever you call it, or to move for postdoc abroad, because I had already a family and it was quite tough from financial standpoint, from just organizational, logistic, etc. But I've decided to go for postdoc in another country, in Uppsala University. It was not like a top tier laboratory, no, it was like quite an average laboratory. But I would say that it was very important experience for me for two reasons. The first reason is actually I improved my English a lot. So you cannot improve your English when you stay just in Russia in one lab for years. It's not the right way to do that. And second, before I moved to another country, another lab, I was really thinking that probably academic science can be quite different in different countries. Can be like better here versus there, something like that. But after I was doing my postdoc in this lab, I clearly understood that research science is not for me. So I understood that it's more or less quite similar everywhere, and that it's just I would like to stick more to some kind of startup activities, business-related activities, something like that. So it was a second very important conclusion for myself.
Yeah, I also would like to add something related to whether or not go for PhD studies abroad. Well, I would contradict the previous opinion, saying that, well, staying here and doing your PhD. On one hand, yes, I agree that staying here and doing your PhD, you are really contributing to the school you are working at, because PhD students are the main force that does science. Okay, this is everywhere, in Russia, in America, in Europe. Okay, this is on one hand, and I advise my PhD students stay as long as they can. And I'm trying to support them as much as I can. I'm attracting the money from outside. I'm spending 10% of the effort on developing something and selling it off, and having 90% of the money to pay my students. My students are actually quite well paid, and trying as much as I can to keep them. And plus, of course, interesting projects. You can't only keep them with the money. Also, you have to create in them impression, or not a real impression, a real thing, that they can go anywhere, work for half a year or something in your friend's lab, for instance, and contribute to some joint publication. This also has to be done, so there's no feeling that you're here, you're not everywhere. This is to say that with science is very similar there and here. Multiple comparisons, believe me, the same in Russia and in America and in Europe, okay? So, but on the other hand, I can talk to you about my unique experience of PhD, myself unique, I mean, of a PhD in America, where you are entitled to listen and to actually attend and to take exams of 15. I've taken 15 classes. 15 classes on the topic of signal processing, probability theory, I don't know, image processing, biological classes, you know, other things really related to my research, which I wouldn't be able to find anywhere here. Okay, and that's in Europe, by the way, as well. It's much more difficult, and the requirement of the number of units and classes to be taken is much less in Europe, as I know, than it's in the United States. And I think those classes that you take during your PhD studies really open up your horizons. They really, like, they make, like, when I just graduated, I was able to take almost any paper and skim through it and understand very rapidly what it was about, because my I don't know how it's in English, Krugazor was quite high. Okay, so so that's why and we are at HSC, for instance, we are now trying to create our own PhD school where we will make students take the classes and increase the requirement on the number of units and classes to be taken from the top, like professors, or partly even it can be in the beginning maybe even Coursera classes, really, which you pay for, but in order to really increase the broadness of view of the students. So that's what I think is really important. And also another thing, when you choose a professor, I absolutely agree. You don't have to go to the top guy, because top guy is already top guy. That's it. You have to go to a young professor who is in the position of publish or perish. This is bad, because publish or perish sometimes results, or often results, in bad publications, because you are very much pressed. But if you choose the guy who is honest to himself, to the first thing, and then he's in publish or perish situation, then you are on the right track, because you will be helping him to obtain his tenure, and you will be like top regarding the publication record when you graduate. So that's my opinion.
Maybe I can also add something to that. From my perspective, actually, the question is wrongly phrased. It's actually the inverse problem that you're trying to address. I mean, if there would be something like a strict, clear rule, you need to be somewhere else, otherwise you're a bad scientist, then this rule would be there. But apparently it is not the case. And so think it the other way around. I mean, who is ending up in a permanent position here? I mean, what decision is that any kind of committee needs to decide on? It is the decision about selecting somebody who apparently is up to the job. So of course he needs or she needs to be scientifically really good. But most importantly, one needs to see that this is a real scientific personality, somebody who drives really his or her science. It doesn't matter what kind of science, it doesn't matter where, how, what. It must become apparent that you are the one who really pushes it, so that if you get a tenure position, that you won't stop then and say, okay, well, no, I'm going back to and start playing tennis or something. I mean, this is a pretty serious investment that the states and the different universities are taking. So anyway, how you can convince a committee that you're the one, that you're really burning for your question, that's fine. If you have a very good reason why you stay in your country, and this is a good reason, and it's clear why this was your choice to go for it, then this is a good reason to stay there. And indeed, well, in principle, you can learn a lot from going abroad. So I indicated that I did that quite extensively, maybe a little bit too extensively. It started to be rather difficult to convince people that this was really a good choice, but it was fun. And I gained so much actually emotional impetus by just going to a different place, starting from scratch, getting in contact with new people. You might not get the impression, but my personality is rather shy actually, and I had to work for years on that one to start speaking to people, and that helped me a lot by just throwing myself over and over again into new constellations. But the main aspect is think from the perspective of a committee. Why should they choose you and not somebody else? And if you find a convincing argument, then this will carry through. So the other way around, that's kind of faking a biography. And come on, it's your life. You won't be able to hold through for a whole life on faking to be the enthusiastic whatever scientist and stuff. That doesn't work. So it's your life, it's your way, and there is nothing like this rule, because in a positive sense, it's an extremely open system. You can be a complete freak and nevertheless they hire you. Or you can be a surprisingly well-dressed, business-like guy, and nevertheless in a natural basic science lab nevertheless is taking you, which does not happen so often. So you can be the complete misfit as long as it's clear it's you. And that's a little bit the difficulty of being in a very good lab, because there is the big guy or the big girl already, and all the golden whatever which comes out of this lab is not depending on you but on that big guy. And it's very often very difficult for the committees to decide, well, this fantastic Nature publication, is that really your work? I mean, what is your contribution? I mean, somebody built up the whole pipeline for 30 years, and well, couldn't you hinder to end up with a Nature publication, or was it really your push to end up with that publication? That can be very difficult to get across to committee. So don't think too much about that. Think about your life and think about how can you convince somebody that you need the job. No, not need, but get the job.
Maybe I want to say a few more things about this. Even when I said, like at the beginning, I didn't want to move. I was lazy. I had like already 2 kids, and it was hard for me to go into a foreign country and with no future. Right? Like if you go to the US, there's no future. Like you need to pick it up. But in the end, I was actually quite happy that I did it, because it really opens up your mind. Like, if you just see like good old Germany and the system, how it is there, like, all of a sudden you see something different. And then also it's hard for me to go back. Like, even like I wouldn't live in Germany anymore. No way. And but it's not that bad, what I think. But it's good for you. Like, it really you should make the experience see something different. And I agree. Like your PhD. Stay here, get a good PhD here, and then go and do your postdoc somewhere else. That's always what I recommend. And for me, it's like, even if I have very good students, I would like to keep them, but it's bad to keep them. It's like, if you're good parents, you make the kids ready for the world and then move out, go. And the same is what I do with my students. Like, even good students, I would love to have them another year or 2, because I know they bring me some papers, but it's not good. So get out. The same as you, like, get your PhD here, like, and explore the world, go somewhere, come back 2 years later, or stay somewhere else. It's a great life what you have in front of you. Take advantage of it.
Okay, maybe someone wants to add something or have a question. I see Sergey has. Okay, you're next.
Thank you for your answering and for your participation. I'm really happy to hear all the things. And I have the next question. What profession or what type of activity have you dreamed when you were a child? And the second one question about the first one, how your vision and how your wishes have been changed during your life.
So I always wondered about these people in kindergarten and school who already knew what they wanted to do. I never. So I started having kind of ideas during my studies, and that was playing music, and that was becoming a theater director, and that was about actually doing reconstruction of old artwork, and so completely different stuff. Then during my postdoc, I was very intrigued indeed by something which is very foreign to me, actually, by indeed the money markets. So consulting appeared to be very good and nice and interesting to me. McKinsey recruits a surprising, interesting kind of people there. Very, very different people. So I suddenly could imagine that. And I told my wife, you know, it's fantastic with McKinsey. They tell you, they assure you, you will only be 3 days a week further away than 200 miles. That's when we just got twins, and somehow that argument did not really worked well with her. So I rather stick to science then. As I said, I only could imagine to end up in science and to do it all my life, basically since 1 year now. Before that, it was also unclear if I would have had the option. So my plan B, if academia was not successful, was to basically use this kind of technology and start a biotech company with that. So I was very much thinking into that direction, getting more knowledge about how to finance something like that. Yeah, so I don't believe in this. I always knew I will be. I don't know. We are a very, very creative kind of field.
I'm one of them. No, but it's very easy. I cannot do something else. I cannot do art. I cannot do literature. I only can do math and science. So what else can I do? Like, that was the choice was made already.
Something bad happened during school.
Yeah, actually, very nice question. It makes the discussion much more warm, interesting. Thank you. So when I was a very little kid, okay, I was planning to be a cosmonaut. Okay, so I would come to my grandma, I would get a box from TV and sit there like and was going like parachute, trying to go down to Earth, you know, from the outer space. And then later I was tearing little like toys, like was putting the heart stained in the red paint, you know, making like blood vessels and things like that. And I would operate on them. Okay, I was playing a surgeon. Okay, but the answer is, well, why I am who I am is because my father was an electrical engineer, and my mother, she's a neuroscientist. So, you know, there I am. So combining both.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question, actually. And I think that when I was like a child, I wanted to become a chemist because it was something that I could do good. But the problem is that right now, for me, it's moving target. So I don't know whom I want to be within like the next couple of years. So that's a big problem. I think that, yeah, it's really a moving target. And so for me now, the most interesting stuff is to make something work, is to bring something to humanity. Like, not to do like a bench science that will turn into a drug after like 20, 30, 40 plus years after it comes out, but just to make something to the real life, something that can materialize. And actually with a venture capital fund, it's more or less like you feel that you help people to be there, But at the same time, I feel that it's more a little bit more about money right now, because like you need to generate returns for your investors, you need to like exit from your companies, and you do not very actively participate. So I think that currently I may be interested more in starting something right now from my own company.
Yeah, it's unusual, once again, unusual item. And it is funny, and I remember very well that even 3 years before graduating the school, I would like to be an officer. I don't know, because I was always very interested in history, and especially military history. That's why probably I have seen that to be an officer, it's a good profession and so on. But in the later classes of the school, I began to be very interested in physics, and officer was already in another life, so all related to military, to army, it was not my choice. And but when I was 50 years old, something returned back, and I began to collect such things of military equipment, uniform, very old. No. I mean the uniform. The uniform, yes. Yeah, of 19th, even 18th century. So history is already in the brain. So a little bit funny.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't have any plan when I was a young kid. I just wanted to have a doctorate. I wanted to be a doctor because nobody in my family did any long studies. So I just wanted to have the highest diploma in the world that could exist. But I didn't have any plan for that. And yeah, for my motivation for research to build something that will help people, that can work, something that is practical that people can use in the day. Because at the beginning of my career, I started to work on the HIV or some molecular modeling on viruses, and I quickly understood that I won't be the guy that will solve the problem by my own. And so I moved to something that I could achieve, and that my lab can do with, say, 5, 6, or 7 people in a group. I cannot solve the problem of HIV, but I can solve the problem finding molecules that can help people in their life, not drugs, but health.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a chemist. I want to be a soccer player, but again, I wasn't that good. Like, so I only was chemist, which was left.
So I think I wanted to be a scientist, and then I took medicine because you could be a student for 6 years, and I thought it would be more fun to be a student for 6 years rather than having to go and work. And then having done that, I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and then I did a bit of psychiatry, and I realized I could never be a psychiatrist. But I couldn't see how anybody wouldn't want to study or see people with brain conditions. It seems far more interesting than anything else.
Okay, we have someone else who wants to talk. Maria?
I wanted to ask again about postdoc. Do European students have problem to find postdoc? Because I know different situations when Russian students, after they make the PhD thesis, they try to find good laboratory. They write different emails and they don't have any answers, or no, you should have money, you should have your own grant. And is it easy for European students to find it, or no? Because we know that the academic career is like a pyramid, yes, which is right in the beginning and very close at the top. So it is really interesting to find a place for postdoc, but what you can advise for students to have a good result?
It is the same, I think. I mean, there is a terrible funnel, and it's very unfair And you've heard some advice already about having great papers and things like that. But I think what the best thing I've heard so far, and which I fully agree with, is to take ownership of a project and research as quickly as possible. And I don't mean saying demanding the IP for the project or shouting at your supervisor, but giving everyone the impression, and because it's true, that this is your work, and really going for a theme and something that you're very interested in. And it can be a method, it can be a final endpoint, it can be a particular condition that your lab is researching. But that's very important to have that directness of approach, and most important, enthusiasm. And not everybody gets postdocs, and not everybody gets tenure. There's no doubt about it, and it's a very unfortunate state of affairs, which leads to a lot of the problems we've heard about publication bias and replication problems, etc. But I do think that enthusiasm and love of science gets you quite a long way.
Yeah, I agree absolutely that you have to really burn about what you want to do. I mean, really, it has to be yours. I mean, it has to be, well, yours maybe not the right word. I mean, you have to really be extremely enthusiastic about what you are doing. And if you enjoy what you're doing, you will be the best who is doing it. I mean, or one of the best. And so you will find your place. That's for sure. That's made bold, but I mean, that's really true advice. And try to understand as early as possible what is that you want to do. Like I myself, I wondered for some time, okay, because as I said, I wanted to be, an astronaut, right? And so I got my pilot license when I was older. So, during PhD studies. So, but then, yes, and then things came together and really decided that I want to do, the particular methodological work on this data analysis and stuff. And that's where I started. But I started late, I think. So if you start early, there's a particular thing you want to do and knock into a single point while keeping your horizons abroad, of course. Big, then you will get the success. That's my impression, opinion.
Another thing is another advice. What I would like to give you is use conferences to get in personal contact with potential supervisor, future supervisor, and they come into your poster and so on like that. Tell them everything what you know about this project, and then ask them directly, will it be possible? Do you have opening positions and so on like. And that's much better. We're getting every day tons of emails from potential PhD and postdoc candidates. But if you know this person, yeah, I remember that nice poster and so on, that's much better.
Yeah, the point is that it's getting a postdoc is also something that you should prepare a long time before defending your PhD. This is what we are asking in France for my students, and also for my students in Korea. The idea is that even 1 year before you defend your PhD, you should already be in the dynamic of finding some contact and of identifying some potential postdocs, because the PI will ask for funding eventually to get you as a postdoc. And if you just wait that you defend and then you say, no, I'm going to try to look for postdocs, of course you will be disappointed, because it's a long time job. So.
I have almost nothing to add. Just in some at least institutes in Academy of Sciences, for example, in many laboratories, a lot of people left abroad, like in the Shemekin Institute, and young people as well. So, and horizontally, almost all young people in the institution know each other or friends of each other. So just try to distribute your personal information, what you are interested in, what are your skills, and so on, horizontally. Not only demanding chief of the lab, but also try to express your needs to your friends, colleagues, and so on. It's not probably too bad.
Before we run out of time, I want to put another question, which is interesting for me personally. What do you think? Do young scientists have to spend their times not only for their work, for science, but to different side activities, such as popularization of science, to teaching, to administrative tasks, to some societies of students and postdocs, and so on. which is not for science exactly, but maybe somehow is useful as well?
Answer: no, not at all. I was also like when I got my first faculty position at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in 2000. I got nervous, like, oh God, let me do this, or let me do that grant writing. And then I met a senior professor, and he looked at me like, I don't know, you only have to worry about science. Only worry about science. If you're worried about something else, I'm worried about you. And it's really true. Only worry about your science. Other stuff will come anyway. Like, take really this advice, like what you heard today, like, worry about your science. Take care of your science, and everything else will come.
Are there any different opinions?
Maybe as a PhD student, I mean, maybe I would say I agree with you that, yes, worry about your science. But as you grow up, you know, academically, then you do have to popularize the science, right? You have to talk to people. I mean, you inevitably do that, right? There's no way. You're invited and you talk to people. And this is how you acquires new blood into your lab, into the field. And I think it's extremely important. But of course, you just never, sometimes you substitute real doing science with teaching, just teaching. Okay, I will do great teaching. I will do great classes. I will try to explain things perfectly, neatly. I will make very intuitive and nice examples, and I will not do science. This is bullshit, because if you don't do science, you won't at some point stop being able to explain things well. So.
But I think that science you are making will regulate itself because if you are really interested in what are you doing in research, you can understand other activities. Do they help you really personally to you or not? Because my feeling is that other activities are important. It's your life. For example, administration, it's good. It can give you some unique understanding of the life you can never touch if you are just in front of the microscope, okay? And for example, me, when I was a fourth year student in MIFI, Engineering Physics Institute, at that time, you know, it was a Komsomol organization, and I was invited to the Komsomol bureau, and I was an order was put. So this summer you will be a commander of the build construction. How to say, stroyotrяд. Yeah, with a nice uniform, yeah. And I said, no, I would like to continue my studies. For summer, I have some good plans and so on, these friends. And, no, you are Komsomolets, so the party says that you should do this. And I did, in fact, with my friends. And, you know, I do not regret at all. It was not a time spent for nothing. I learned a lot in other areas. So that's why I think if your research rhythm, the rhythm of your research permit you to do something else and you enjoy this, why not?
I'd like to answer there one thing as well. So number one is don't stretch the time period that you're planning for too much. I mean, it's really it's my experience. It's the time horizons, so to speak, is steadily increasing. Doing a PhD, really just stick to your science, focus on that one. Pretty often, actually, also getting in postdoc position still is very much feasible, and it's still fun and playground, and it's great. Real life and everything else starts afterwards. So that's really when you need to decide what to do. In that respect, actually, let me ask you a question. How many of you think will stay in science, in real hardcore basic science? Could you just show up your hand? Don't be shy. Well, there comes an educated guess about 40%. So you guys are scientists already, so you are your profession is to analyze the system. So what do you think? How many PhD students is a professor producing during his lifetime? So that's something between 100 to 1,000. So he's replacing, or she's replacing herself by a factor of 100 to 1,000. So just a numbers game is that most of you will not be in science in about 20 years. So that is something you need to consider. So do really the thing you like. Have the fun with what you're doing, because that really drives you to the next step. But be very, very open-minded. I ask all my PhD students and my postdocs to basically sum up what they learned beyond science during their stay in labs, and it's a tremendous amount of different things that you're learning. I mean, consider what are you worth without, or let's put it the other way around. Who's really interested in the science project that you're pursuing? And be honest. No, I mean not you personal, but ask yourself, who in your environment, who of the rest of the world is really fascinated and impressed by what you're doing? I do not find many people who are impressed by what I'm doing, okay? To be very honest. So it is not the science per se which actually gains us the respect and which opens up the possibilities in the workspace. It is other qualities, indeed, like our emotional attachment to a topic which lasts longer than few days or few weeks. Actually, to work on something for 3, 7, 12, 20 years, I mean, that's insanely long. And many, if not most of the normal, regular other people do not have this emotional capability to really go through all these shit of negative results one time after the other and still continue working for it. And I mean, okay, maybe you're a little bit still in the student bubble, but if you hang out in the bar and start talking about your project, I guess many of you know this experience of, well, maybe I should talk about something else, you know. So there's something else.
No.
There's something very, very much different than just your scientific project that makes up your worth. And think about that, because that really also opens you up possibilities. It opens up your field, and it makes a potential transition from science to something else, which can be extremely challenging and extremely fulfilling, much easier for you.
Yeah, I think another thing, very short one, when you asked about whether to participate in some external activities, the problem, as just Tim said, when you do science, I mean, it's absolutely normal that you get negative results. You get negative results, you plan, and you still get negative results, but you need to do a lot of other things, and it piles up. I mean, you have a lot of things that you promised to do, to give a lecture, to write a grant, and blah, 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 write a paper, but you're getting negative results, and you're trapped with it. I mean, so that makes it very difficult to participate in everything else when you're actually doing active science and really pushing the edge. Okay, so that's just the explanation why it is difficult.
When you do science and you have a lot of negative results, yes, but the best feeling is always all of a sudden like, yes, that makes sense. You can explain it, and it's like we're all like, I all feel like scientists are still like kids, right? There's so much joy if something really works out, and so much joy that if you can explain something. Like this is like always, like for me, it's rewarding enough for all these months and even like years where nothing really came out. So if you still think like this, then you are for science.
Okay, we have a question from the first row, or maybe not a question, but...
Yeah, I can actually comment on two questions which were already here as a person who went as a postdoc just recently, 2 years ago, to Denmark, and I got my PhD in Russia, and then I worked not as postdoc but as a scientist and senior scientist in Russia for 4 years, and then went as a postdoc to Denmark. So first of all, starts with your PhD abroad. Because if you get your PhD here, then it will be extremely hard for you to get the postdoc position abroad, because they will, the expectations will be much higher when you go to the lab. First of all, they will expect that you speak fluent English, and you certainly cannot do this after a PhD in Russia. So, and when you are just freshly made bachelor or master student and go for your PhD abroad, the expectations are much lower, and then it's not that hard to get. It's much easier to get a PhD position in abroad than a postdoc position abroad. And then when you get your PhD here in Russia, it will be hard for you to get straight away for postdoc abroad, because PhD diplomas from Russia, they are considered with a lot of skepticism abroad. And what was the easiest way for me, it was to work for some time in Russia, and then having some scientist and senior scientist positions in my CV. It was not that hard to get the postdoc position abroad, but then expect that they will just ignore that you worked as a postdoc already. So my experience, so what I can see in the lab is that I'm considered to be as a freshly made postdoc. And another thing is that, when you apply for the grants abroad, when you start with your postdoc abroad, you will get into the problem that when you apply for young scientists, young postdoc grants, they have limitations of 2 to 3 years after your PhD. After this time, so if it is longer than 3 years after your PhD, you cannot apply already for most of the grants for young postdocs abroad. So if you start as a PhD abroad, then it's much easier for you to go to the grants. So this is how the system is designed abroad.
Okay, thank you, Sergey, for your opinion.
Just can I comment a little bit? Because me personally, I do not fully agree with this opinion, because it depends what are you looking for. If you still are interested in your own project, yeah, and it's maybe more difficult. It's always difficult to find the research area where you are working, where you have some results and you defended your PhD thesis. It's difficult to find the laboratory. But if you find it after you continue your research line, and you are happy, or you are at least satisfied. And in this case, as Sergey described us, you are adopting to the foreign system, and I don't know, it depends on the personality. For example, for someone it's okay if you are just planning your career and trying to become a professor somewhere in the foreign university or return back after to Russia. But if still the first case, when you are looking your own way, I think you can survive, you can proceed with your demands.
Well, I mean, if you think about, well, my impression actually contrary to what you said, well, maybe because I'm mainly methods guy and electrical engineer, and usually you after your PhD, it's very likely that after getting PhD, you get tenure track position. I mean, well, the position that you like in 4 years, you end up tenured professor. This is very likely. In science, it's usually different. When you do like a chemist, a biologist, you really have to go through a postdoc and maybe yet another postdoc, right? But in electrical engineering, at least my impression that finding and this neuroimaging field that I'm doing, right? Finding postdoc position is much simpler and much less competitive than finding a PhD position. This is speaking about the US. I'm not speaking about Europe. I know it's much easier to get into PhD studies in Europe, but in the US, the criteria are really formal based on the GRE scores, and a lot of, not to say anything bad about Chinese students, but I mean, they score 100% on GRE, and there is 100 of them in front of you in the list, and the professors just don't see you. That's why what you were told and advised to contact to get in touch with the professor, to get in touch with the researcher at the conferences or via email or however, to just basically make him know about yourself. Well, that's something. And another thing, what you said, when our PhD students come to foreign labs as postdocs and they look like kids, well, this is true. Well, one of the things is that our PhD students, unfortunately, are not used to writing their own papers on their own, because postdoc is expected to be responsible for writing his own papers. He is responsible to be absolutely principal author on the paper. The professor can give you an advice, can give you a topic to research, can discuss it with you, but you are the one who is leading the research. And unfortunately, Russian PhDs are, that's true. I mean, we are now working, as I mentioned, at HSC, for instance, and other places, to change the rules, to change the game, so that our graduates are much more competitive. But if, again, going back, usually if you have your own idea of what you're doing, if you're really interested in what you're doing, and you really go to conferences, talk to people, you show that you are working, you are very interested, you work a lot, and because you work a lot, you are quite highly qualified. And you really, if you go to a foreign lab, you can really be new blood, you can really show them a slightly different way towards more or less the same goal, and they will appreciate that. That's my impression. It's not like really black and white.
I just have one comment to that. So the point is that I consider Russian students and Russian PhD students as physically more competitive than European. European students and PhD students, they look like children in comparison with Russian. It's just that the point is that it's the way the science work in our country. You need to think and plan so much in advance. You need to be super competitive in Russia to publish anything. It's much easier in Europe. I don't know about the United States. I stay in Europe. So the students, PhD students, and even young postdocs in Europe, they just grow up in a very lazy atmosphere, and that's why Europe so likes to send their people to the United States so they can smell the powder, how the real science, competitive science, does work. So the students from Russia are much more competitive, but the problem is that they are not considered as much more competitive by the Europeans.
Maybe because they lack communication skills.
Yes, that's
language matters a lot. Yes, the way you convey your ideas, the way you explain things, the way you formulate what you want, the way you write your papers, your conference papers, really has to be taught, and it's not taught here extensively. That I agree. I agree with that.
I completely agree with that, and especially lacking the language skills.
Language skills, yeah. Well, I mean, if you study for GRE, you will learn like thousands of words you will never use in your life unless you write nature paper. So
I agree. Like, and I know this from I am in North America. Russian students are very competitive because you know why? The education is fabulous. It's really great. Like it's in Germany where education was good, but meanwhile it's totally shitty. Like they changed the entire system. They don't know anything anymore. But Russian students still have the basic, and it's very important. I rather take a Russian student than a student from Germany or from France, to be honest.
By the way, I had another question that I think that we have time to discuss. It is exactly about soft skills. Let's speak about what is it and how and where to obtain them. It is true that in Russia, for up until now, it is some sort of despised thing to learn anything apart from science. But why do we really need, and how we should get experts in giving talks, preparing presentations, being a star, some sort of?
I think I didn't learn it either. Like when I did my my PhD, to how to speak and how to write, and it's coming. But more important is that you know the basics, and this is right now what I see. Like they only go 3 years for their diploma in Germany. What can they learn in 3 years? In chemistry, in physics. They're scratching the surface, nothing. And that's what I see is like the simple things, the simple basic stuff they don't know. The other stuff, how to speak, and it doesn't matter. Like even like like in my field, there are great scientists, probably the next Nobel Prize winner. How they give talks, horrible. We are not actors. We're doing science. It is what is on the slide is important, not that you're running around like Steve Jobs and in the back of the slides flipping around and so on. Like, you don't need this. You can still present your stuff in black and white. That's not important. The same is like how to write a paper. It's very easy. There's the structure, always the structure, how to do it. You can learn it. But important is that you have a very good education. A basic education is the most important for me.
So just saying that you can see from the rest of the panel that there's a different way of doing things. And I think most important is to appreciate what you're good at very early on, what you enjoy very early on, and most important of all, what you're quite bad at early on. And so if you do have poor soft skills and poor communication skills, then that's something you do have to train up. Some people on this panel are naturals, and so they exude a certain warmth, they know how to communicate with people, and it's not an effort for them. And for other people, if you're shy, or if you don't like speaking in big groups, things like that, then it's something that you have to practice and you have to work on. So rather than being a one-size-fits-all, that everybody who does science, you can do things outside or not do things outside, you can practice communication skills or not practice communication skills. You have to work out what's best for you, and most important, what you're not quite so good at and what people will notice. And then you can, I think it helps a lot. And if someone says, I'm going to talk about the science and I'm purely a scientist, you pick that up. And there's no need to mask it with good communication skills, etc. It can be seen in the way someone gets things across. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, the worst thing. Well, I can tell you, I agree with Sergey, right? So that the worst thing you get is that when you have someone who comes to your lab and says and presents something in a great way, you say, "Wow, what a guy!" And you have like very high expectation of this guy, and then he starts working for you, and you fire him in half a year, and send him and don't write him a recommendation as far as you want. So this is very bad. I mean, there is a conflict between your presentation skills, contrast, and the stuff, the feeling of yourself, of your work. This is the worst. Okay, so they have to match. And whether or not you are good enough for the particular place, I mean, they will decide. But if you are a bad presenter but doing great science, and if they accept you, they will understand that. But if you are a great presenter but doing bad science, they will kick you off.
Now, my feeling is that we understand clearly that all the questions here on the round table are provocation. It is a provocation in a good sense, I mean, because there is no answer, direct and straightforward answer on each question. There are so many aspects behind, and so many depends on your individuality and the situation you are and so on. But that's why my feeling is just one among tens or hundreds points of view concerning this last question. As Napoleon said, let's start the battle and we will see. So let's do the science and it will regulate everything. If you are really interested in science, once again, okay? You will try to make efforts. You will make efforts to present your data, to convince people that your results are good, are interesting, and you will be obliged to write a paper, because if not, nobody knows your results. So this is a self-regulating process. So just walk. Work hard and everything will come.
I can take a little bit different perspective here, I think, because actually I've been a bench scientist for like several years, and then I've moved to venture capital. And as far as I understand, I think more than half of the audience don't want to stay with the science for like the entire life. And so the thing is that for I think for jobs, for career outside of the science, soft skills does really matter a lot. So for me, it was a big problem, and I think that it's still a big problem to develop soft skills, to start communicating with people. And actually, I have to say that it was not trained during my PhD, during my postdoc at all. So I had to do it like on my own, and I think that I did quite a good progress, but it was just when I was working with venture capital, just meeting like a dozen of people every day, talking every day with a dozen of people in English and Russian, etc. And it's just emerged during this talk. So I believe that if you want to stay in science, that's absolutely correct, that you do a good science, do good publications. It's hard data, it's black and white, it's good or not. But if you want to move somewhere like into your own startup or into maybe consulting or whatever it is, then soft skills matters, and you need to train it somehow.
One practical thing for you. If you were to learn English, or if you are to learn English, your English skills do not depend on the amount. Well, they depend, but given the equal amount of time you speak English, your English skills depend on how little you speak Russian. So if you don't speak Russian, the English is the only way of communication, then you progress very fast. If you have your Russian folks to hand out, well, I mean, it will go, but it will progress very slowly. That's from the brain, I mean, that's a lesson from the brain.
Does anyone want to make a shout?
Alexei says that you should burn the thing you do. So I want to ask the question about that. Do you like a routine? A science routine? This is the question. Do you burn it?
I'm very sorry because I didn't catch the first phrase. I caught my name, but I didn't know it was this Alexei or me, and I lost what you said.
Yes, I'm about you. I'm
yes,
sorry.
Okay. You said that you have to burn. You have to burn for what you do, right?
Yes.
Then what the question is?
And the question is, the science contains a lot of routine, and the question is, should you burn this routine, or I don't know how to like.
Yes, science takes a lot of routine. That's true. But you have to be strong enough not to burn away when you do the routine, not to burn out. Okay, so now it does take a lot of routine, and it's normal. You have to keep in mind that. Well, I was speaking to lots of people who are doing their PhDs, and in my lab, I'm trying to keep students happy as much as I can. But still, they fall into melancholy, and they say, "Well, this doesn't work as great, and it's difficult to write out because and blah blah blah." You have to really keep working. I mean, that's the only recipe. It's really hard, but in order to be able to work, to find the power inside yourself to work, you have to burn. So, I mean, it's hard. It's a hard way. There are much better, not better, but much easier ways to earn money and to maybe spend your time and but when you get to something, when you really understood something and you can explain it to people and you feel, wow, I finally got it. This feeling is incomparable. Exactly. It's incomparable to anything else. I mean, especially to those who do science, because you do science because of that partly.
So,
not completely, but
maybe you can add something. I'm directing with companies what I have, and with the 2 labs, and also a small lab in Germany, around over 50 people. And not everyone can do something best in the field. Like some people I have, like PhD scientists, they are fantastic in the lab, but they don't see the big picture. I have one guy, he's never touching anything in the lab, but he's a great thinker. That's fine. You need to figure out what are you good at, and then you need to find a place in a group or in a team where you can really add your good skills to the team. That's the most important, I think.
Can I ask the question again? Again. It's a question. As I'm a doctor. Growing doctor. I'm a resident. So my question is about doing simultaneously science and medicine, practice medicine. So I find it quite utopic because it's difficult to do simultaneously. You need time for both, and it's difficult, and you need your personal time too. So what do you think about that? I think this is a question for Dr. Morto.
I think I should add to this question, because it is not very common in Russia for doctor to do science at the same time.
Yeah, right. So I think it's, if you do two things, whatever those two things are, there's always a feeling that you're not doing one of them as well as someone who's doing those full time. So that's inescapable. When I'm doing research, I think I'm a physician. When I'm doing medicine, I think, oh, I'm a researcher. And both of them, I'm always thinking the other thing. But there's a very clear role for people who do both. And I know, sorry, I'm talking to you and whoever else is a physician. And I think it's very important. At least you get a very clear understanding of some of the clinical problems that you face, and they can direct you. So I know lots of basic scientists, including my wife, who say that medicine spoils you and it makes you a cruder thinker in a way, but also it puts you right in the face of the clinical problems, and it directs the way you might approach science and what you do. So I think it's a very important thing to do, and there are lots of other people who do it, but you can't help but feel that you're not doing either properly at times.
Just few words in addition. I'm not a medical doctor, but I know personally some people who are really good doctors in practice, yeah, and making operations and so on, visiting hospitals every day. At the same time, they are participating in international congresses, making reports on some scientific topics in their area, and are well famous for that. If they can do this, why you are not capable?
I think it is time for one last question.
Thank you very much for all this talk. I want to ask, what should you do if you are really burning with the topic of your research, if you really want to do it, but it seems that the method is not for you. So you are not capable to do this research because it's sometimes too hard, and others are more capable of this, but they are not burning like you. Did you understand the question?
Yeah, that would be, if the two people would apply, let's say in our lab, it would be a difficult choice, really. Well, for one thing is that the reason why it would be a difficult choice, I can explain you, is because if you say that somebody is burning but not as capable as somebody else who is burning less but is capable, now the question is the extent to which you're incapable. And if you are very incapable, then maybe you don't understand that you are burning. Maybe that you understand that you are burning is not really that you are burning. Maybe it's just you think that you are burning. Okay. So no, really, so it's like if somebody has really weak skills, I mean, like, but if somebody is a good thinker, I mean, you think skills can be learned. There's no problem. I mean, it's really no problem. I mean, we have psychologists like completely unaware of math people who come and in 2 years they master math and they write papers with like crocodiles like this with lots of formula with optimization and stuff. It's no problem, you know. Your capability is your basically intellectual power, and unfortunately when you do science you have to possess quite strong intellectual power. That's true. I mean, you know, but the you can develop it, of course, during your bachelor studies, during your school study. But if you're very much burning but very incapable, and somebody is not burning but capable, I don't know. I would take the person for probation and would take the other person also for 1 year to see maybe he or she will start burning. So I don't know. It's a difficult choice, really. It is difficult.
Well, we had this topic a little bit earlier. I mean, this whole thing is about science is about 90% negative results. So this is basically our standard situation that something does not work out. And so one sign of, I think, of a good scientist is, first of all, not to give up, but secondly, to find a solution. So this is then very case specific. So this could be indeed to just try harder to learn the technique, or to find an alternative approach, which is much more your approach. And coming back to what has been mentioned earlier, to really make it your project and also your solution. It does not everything fit to every person, and sometimes it's just something which does not suit you. You might be able to perform that a little bit, and it might turn out to just scratch above statistical significance, but it's not really perfect and beautiful science. So, but it's one of the crucial signs of a scientist, to find solutions, to find the turnarounds around a problem. So if the problem is a scientific problem, yeah, of course, I mean, find another concept, find another mechanistical explanation why biology works as it apparently works. But this also accounts for actually technical problems. So find a solution for that, find a way around that.
Yeah, sorry, a little bit to soften what I just said a little bit. Well, don't be too quick to say that you are incapable, okay, and considering yourself less capable than somebody else. Okay, because it's so multifaceted, you know, so many aspects to everything. So it's, I mean,
in many cases, my students they switch topics. I see them, they're struggling in the lab, and I had like one of them. It's for example, like this guy is amazing in writing software. So and the other sits in front of a computer and doing some lab work. So I switch him to a bioinformatics project, so this is also for you like very important to figure out what you can do and what you like to do, and in many cases what you like to do you're good at, and it's very important to figure this out. And then this burning, like the enthusiasm is coming automatically. This guy is sitting day and night in front of the computer, but he hates to go into the lab. But I'm in the biochemistry and microbiology department. But still, like you can work around, and now you get some bioinformatics project instead of being in the lab. So this is feasible. It's all doable. But the push needs to come also from you.
Okay, to get finished, I'll ask all the experts to express their best wishes to all of our participants. Just one sentence from each of you, and that will be enough. Just in the order of appearance, Parish.
So, thank you all for listening so acutely through all the talks. Like a second sentence quickly. I think all your questions have been extremely acute and a pleasure to listen to.
Stay in science.
Yeah, you've been selected amongst so many people, and you are definitely the best talented students in these areas, and I really felt it when we discussed when I discussed with you. So I'm quite happy that you're here, and I'm sure you will find something interesting in your life. I'm sure.
Just be honest with yourself and with your work.
So I wish you not to narrow down very much and to stay in science, or not in science, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm coming to the end. I made it on the top, basically announced not my words, but saying don't worry, try to be happy. That's really true. It's really, you have to be happy to do science.
Well, I wish you the self-confidence to take failure and not to restrict yourself just to what you're thinking that might be your next step. It might turn out completely different. If you stay in science, wonderful. If you don't, also wonderful. Why not? I mean, it's not the whole world are scientists. And so have the self-confidence, be aware of what an academician, actually, what an academic person has learned. That's in many respects so much more than in many other fields. Be self-confident about that and bring this self-confidence into your next step and pursue what you like, actually.
Thank you all for interesting discussion. Now it is dinner time at 7 o'clock sharp. Those of you who are chosen to take part in
Всем привет еще раз. Спасибо, что были с нами. Извините за проблемы со звуком. Не все так легко. Meg Maron, thank you for follow on Good Game. So thank you guys again to all of you who watched us on Twitch, YouTube, package, Vkontakte or Facebook, who came from Telegram. So we will have many more streams during this week. So please subscribe to our channels on every platform you watch us, so to be notified when we are online. Ребят, спасибо, что смотрели. Надеюсь, вам понравился язык. Мы, напоминаю, обсуждали карьеру молодых ученых. Каково это ими быть, каково это проникать в науку. Каково выстраивать свою карьеру в России, в Штатах, за рубежом. Вот. А сегодня вечером будет лайт и будет на русском языке. У нас замечательное событие. У нас юбилей нашего научно-популярного шоу «Наука на завтрак». Оно выйдет сегодня в 11 вечера. Мы по этому поводу даже сменили время выхода. Это будет отличный развлекательный стрим. А нашим особым гостем будет Александр Панчин, известный в России популяризатор науки. И, к счастью, все-таки еще и ученый. Панчин. Да, сотрудник Института проблем передачи информации Российской академии наук. Вот, будем обсуждать кучу клевых статей. В частности, одну из статей, которую нам прислал наш постоянный зритель Фраг с Пекача. Вот, как-то так. Поэтому не пропускайте в 11 часов вечера по московскому времени. Все, всем пока, до встречи.